Hello and welcome to another episode of FCC Fan TV. Today we are going to be covering Week 1. FCC at Nashville SC ended in a 2-2 draw. Goals scored for FC Cincinnati by Lucho Acosta and Brenner, and then answered by Yonder Cadiz and Randall Lee all. Cody, how are we feeling about this game?
You know, after the first 15 minutes, obviously we were probably super excited and thought we were going to roll. The rest of the game kind of brought us back down to earth. But I will always take a point on the road, especially against a defensive team like Nashville. Nice thing about this match, too, is that, one, it's week 1, so we couldn't really lose ground anyways, but only 2 teams picked up wins in the Eastern Conference. Montreal and DC are the only ones sitting at the top with 3. So point on the road, week 1, I'll definitely take it. And we scored 2 goals, unlike last year. So a lot of positives to take out of this match.
I agree. If you would have told me going into this game, we would have scored 2 goals on the road and came out with a point, I'd have been very excited. But then also, as I may have texted you after the game, 15 minutes of Bliss and 75 minutes of white knuckle tear of me grabbing the edge of the seat.
Yeah. How was your experience down there, by the way?
I enjoyed it. It was nice to go down. I've never been to Nashville outside of it, so I really didn't have anything to compare it to, but it definitely kind of felt strange being there, obviously, right now with COVID. A lot of places were still closed and under construction, and everything that was open was very limited and a lot more table service and like things like that. But overall, it was a great time. Nissan Stadium was nice location across the river, kind of just standalone, but like very easy to get to. All in all, it was a nice time down there, and I'll probably be looking to go back. I think we're back down there in August. Probably look to make that trip back down. So
Cool.
no complaints down there. Saw some goals, came away with a point, left happy in my mind.
Yeah.
A little disappointed
absolutely.
based on the game, as we can kind of look at here, but it would have been nice to get the win that could have felt like we had going after, like I said, the first 15 or so minutes.
I believe last episode you did call a 2-2 draw, though.
I believe you were correct. I was thinking about that,
Yeah.
and I honestly did not go back in time to rewatch to be how to open with that. So I may cut myself in here and be like, I am Nostradamus. I will predict all scores correctly to start this year. I did say I think it might have been a 3-2 loss, so which honestly kind of we can transition here. Probably should have been.
At least.
Yeah, so
At least a 3-2 loss.
yeah, so we kind of looking at the who scored here. Why we say that? Let's we can come down here see some match ratings, but I want to go here match report real quick. And what we're looking at here is Nashville with 31 total attempts on goal.
Yeah.
And I believe I saw somewhere their expected goals was 3.58, closer to 4, which watching the way they were pretty much just wave after wave of runners and crosses and headers and just it was just I don't even know how to describe like just like watching it. I was sitting there like basically hands over my face every time the ball went into the box.
Yeah. And they had 13 set pieces. We knew they were dangerous from set pieces. We got lucky they didn't score off of any of them. But that is something we touched on the last episode. We knew that coming in, and Nashville, I don't want to say didn't disappoint, but they did what they were supposed to do.
I would say here, just looking at this, also says they had 0 counterattacks, which makes sense considering they controlled this game from basically the 20th minute on. I think we maybe had 1 or 2 actual good breaks after that we can talk about. I know I've got an image of one here that was a nice play near the end of the first half, but they, outside of the first 15 to 20 minutes, when they looked like they were just got a little shell shock there with that old early goal and penalty, really just locked down and were frankly the better team for the majority of this game.
Well, I would say that's the most disappointing part about our performance was that Nashville's not a possession team, and they were in this match, which makes no sense. They are a sit back and counter team, and we let them have possession for 65, 70 minutes. That's not going to play well against other teams that are possession teams in this league. I think we just kind of lucky that we essentially almost didn't play Nashville's game because we let them have the ball too much.
I,
um, but I mean, once again, we walked away with a draw, so we can't be completely disappointed. And we walked away with a draw because of Tyton.
Yes,
But
man of the match, easily by far in MLS 11, goalkeeper of the week. I want to say
yeah,
he had 11 saves this game, and it's a little unfortunate because I think even on both the goals we gave up were kind of unfortunate. The one was I think the first one was maybe might have been Teton's only mistake of the game where he dove and didn't quite dive at the ball and dove across his goal and kind of just pushed it along. But even that I think was more of a runner uncovered on the back post. And then the second one that Leal scored with that was it a shot? Was it a cross? Up, over, off the post and in. Can't really do much when someone gets that lucky and would. Frankly, he had a great game, so he was feeling himself when he did it, and it's just one of those things like can't really stop that.
no, and I would venture to say, especially in MLS, but even venture out into the world, there's going to be less than a handful of goalkeepers that might have been able to save that. If there's nothing we could have done, that's a goal. The first one, I agree, could have been played a little bit differently, and we'll touch on that first one because Teton almost should have never been put in that position in the first place. But the second goal, it's a goal. Like it's a goal no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, and honestly, if I was just kind of jaw on the ground watching it happen. Like I wasn't even mad when it went in watching it. I was just like, okay, like
Yeah,
I was just one of those things
there's
you just
nothing
kind of
we
like
could have done.
seeing. Like you can't really hate on when someone scores like a nice, amazing goal like that. I don't know if it'll win goal of the week.
Correct.
Honestly, I haven't. I did a very poor job. Just
I don't know. There were some goal of the year nominees in MLS already this first week. There, if you guys, I mean, one, we're an FC podcast, but if you want to venture out into the MLS world, go just watch some highlights from this week, and there were some goals.
I'll have to do that. I should have taken advantage
Yeah,
of COVID vaccine part 2 deathbed yesterday and watch some highlights.
yeah,
But I definitely need to check out some more before this week and just to kind of get acclimated to what the rest of the league has been up to.
yeah.
So I was going to throw this one to you, Cody. Is what performance besides Teton stood out to you for FC Cincinnati this week, good or bad?
Okay, then I'll two-part this then. I think an underrated performance this week. I don't even want to say good, but exceeded my expectations. Was Matarita. Um, he got up the field well when the few times we had possession on offense. Obviously, he had the assist on Lucho's goal, but he also did an exceedingly good job of getting back. He was beat a few times, but Nashville had possession most of the game. But he played the wingback position how it's supposed to be played, so I was very pleased with him. Now let's flip to the other side of the field. Zhao, definitely not what I hope to see for the rest of the year. And Nashville exploited that all match. Their offense ran through Zhao's side because they knew he wasn't, I don't want to say up to par because we really don't know what he's going to be at this right back position. But it was awful. He was just playing awful. I almost think he forgot he was playing right back half the time, and it was just like he was playing right wing in his head because he couldn't get back, and that side was exploited all 90 minutes.
Yeah, I wonder. I obviously hope that improves, but I'm hoping that was just first game, like real game jitters, and just kind of
Yeah,
getting like losing track in a high adrenaline kind of thing. Obviously, regular season just it's a different switch than preseason, and despite it looked pretty solid from what we saw there in preseason, you just wonder if the moment just kind of got to him on the bright lights big stage of first week of the season.
yeah. Well, and you can't take conclusions out of one match. Now, if we're having the same conversation after week 5, it's an issue. But after week 1, am I disappointed? Yeah. Did we lose because of it? We didn't end up losing because of it. So we'll get the pass this week. Hopefully, he comes back against New York this weekend and looks a lot better. I assume he's going to be starting. I assume he's going to be starting at that right back position. But week 1, it did not look good.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue with him too was that him and Barrial a lot of times didn't look on the same page. When Zhao went up, they oftentimes looked like they were occupying the same space, and it made it really hard to pull off any sort of combination. And then it really looked like that Barreal wasn't either instructed to or just didn't think about dropping back when Zhao went on those runs to sort of cover for him. He tried to almost go up and kind of join the attack at all times and never kind of sometimes doing that interchange you kind of need to keep defensively sound.
Yeah, well, and I would almost say that again for let's go left and right side again here. Let's just move up the field for Barreal and Calvin Harris. There were both moments in that match when they had the ball at their feet, and I'm like, okay, like these, both of these guys look pretty decent. But when they didn't have the ball on their feet, they looked lost half the time. Uh, Once again, Barreal we only saw for flashes last season. He came to MLS middle of the year. It was a COVID year. We really don't know what we have. Calvin Harris is his first professional match. They both definitely get passes, and they both had their bright spots. But overall, the wings, anything we had that match was going through Lucho and Brenner in the middle. The sides were almost completely useless this match.
Yeah, I noted here that in mind that Brenner and Lucha looked very comfortable pressing, knowing what passing windows to close down, when to kind of just launch yourself forward into that press. And obviously, we can see for Brenner being aware of the situation led to him getting fouled in the box for the penalty he then took. It just kind of looked like that energy and sort of being on the same page wasn't present in the rest of the midfield or the wings. Barreal kind of looked okay in the press to me. Kind of makes sense. He'd been in the system a little bit longer than even everybody else there, especially Calvin Harris, obviously, first game at all at this level. So I'd be curious to see if going forward we still let Lucho and Brenner. Maybe we just try a little two-man press at the top, because obviously it looked like we went to a flat 4-4-2 in the defense there, and let's kind of let Lucho and Brenner run the top of it and kind of get that press, which is nice. But if it's not sort of being reciprocated with a second ball win off of a sloppy pass that they possibly force, it's not really going to help you. It's just going to tire those guys out.
Yeah. Well, and we can even transition that into your two central midfielders essentially in the match. What central midfielders? Kubo was awful. I want to have faith in Kubo. I want to have faith in him. But no matter the position he's played for this team, and granted, he's played a lot. We've asked him to do a lot, and it sounds like he's been okay with it all so far. He's never impressed me, and so far playing that 8, he's been non-existent in preseason and now in this first match as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to transition here over to like some of the images that I kind of snipped from this game, just kind of the very beginning, where I was very excited for what I saw. This is literally the first minute, where Kubo was the one dropping back along the back line to receive the possession, which I thought was a great decision considering how much we noticed that he does not like to turn at all. Even if there's not really any pressure, if he receives the ball with his back to the opposing goal, he's not turning and playing that ball upfield. And he has the ability to make nice passes. Like, we've seen it when he's able to like turn, like when he is looking at the upfield. So I thought it was very nice that they were letting him come down here and kind of do what we saw last year out of Harris and Makoto, start the possession from the back. And I like that, because even then he was willing to dribble here for a little bit. And we kind of did this when we were in possession, like you said, the first 10-15 minutes of the game. And then once we never really regained it after that, we kind of went away from this. So it leads me to those things where they might like what they see out of him from training, because we're not putting ourselves in practice under a lot of pressure possibly. Or just kind of, you can't really simulate the full game situation here where a team's going to be controlling that much. So they could, as Tom could say, he likes what he sees from Kubo, but I think he may be seeing I'm trying to think of a nice way to phrase it, like a perfect picture of him, like through a practice tinted lens, and possibly not the game situation sort of midfielder that we actually need out there on the field.
Well, and the thing too is he's a DP, and we have to look at it from that. So they're going to want him on the pitch, but in this match especially, Alan Cruz coming in so late made no sense to me. He should have brought in when Lacadia got brought in. Is Kubo an upgrade from Cruz right now? You've always had the prediction that Cruz is in Stom's doghouse for whatever reason that we have no idea. But that's what made no sense to me. I get giving Kubo the chance. Like I said, I want to have faith in him. I want to see good things. But when Nashville's owning possession for about 40 minutes straight, you got to change things up. We took Calvin Harris out. We brought Licati in. Great. Licati looked bad too, but once again, he just came back. He's not fit yet. But I didn't see why Cruz wasn't brought on earlier to try and change the midfield up. We had to have some disruption, and we had none of it all match.
Yeah, we'll comment to kind of the Licati coming in. He came in, and then it seemed like what we tried to do to get out of pressure was literally just bomb the ball deep and let him try to win battles in the air, which just, it's unfortunate. Like, that's what you get brought in to do. And like, he fought for him. It's just, that's not how the team's built. And we don't frankly have the personnel to kind of play like route one ball here and just boot it up long. That's one thing I think I just wasn't prepared for, was just how short we were, and just not even thinking about that before the season. It became very apparent this game on set pieces, where we pretty much lost every aerial battle, it felt like.
Yeah, which Nashville's not the team to set piece battle against.
I think even then, like even their midfielders, like I believe Godoy is like 6 foot tall. Like obviously Walker Zimmerman's, I want to say 6'4". Like they're just, Romney's big, and then, I mean, considering our center forwards, Brenner's 5'9", like Kubo's, I think 5'6", Makoto might be 5'10". We just don't have a lot of size out there at all, which is one thing I just noted. It was weird that we didn't, when we were just bunkering so hard, that Vasquez never came on for anybody, just to sort of provide that extra height, just to flick the ball away. But I mean, I'm not really bitter he didn't come in. It just seemed odd that you wouldn't bring in somebody like that when you saw where that game ended up in especially the last 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, into what we were just talking about, if our strategy was going to be to bomb it up, why not have the tall guy in there? Which I don't want to say like that's what Vasquez is good for, being tall. He's a fine center forward. But if that was going to be the strategy, that's the center forward to have in there to do it. At the same time, when you're trying to build the squad and trying to build the relationships between them, and you realistically want Lacadia, Brenner, and Lucho in there, you got to just let them play through the rough stretches at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it'd just be better than to just wait till the next game and let Lacadia get the start and kind of grow through that in the beginning of the season. It just seemed like, I think Lacadia is fine. We saw it last year. That was one of our options for outlets, was just playing the ball, and he fights for things in the air. Like, he does well at it. A little undersized for it, so I get that it's a solid strategy, but just kind of at that point, like, why not Vasquez for Brenner at the 75th if we saw that's how we were going to try to play it? Why only have one option for that instead of just bring on the second one? We have 5 subs. Like, it just kind of seemed like one of those things.
Yeah. And I think we had the most useless substitution of all time in the 92nd.
Yeah, that seemed like the classic time waster.
Yeah, it was, but at that point, I didn't know. We were under so much pressure. I was just like, call the game. Let's walk away at the point. And then we bring in Harris, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is to waste time. I just didn't understand it. It was honestly just kind of comical. It didn't affect us in a positive or negative way. But a nice 90-second sub, and the match ended like a minute later.
Yeah, I did find it interesting because when I went back and watched the stream just to kind of grab these still shots that we'll go over here in a second, like some more of them, just the announcers calling for Harris much earlier in the game, and I was just like, they're talking about his veteran leadership, and I was just like, do you want a guy out there slower than Makoto right now that plays worse defense? Like, I was just confused. Like, sure, he's a veteran leadership, but man, like, our issue wasn't veteran leadership and in this game. For me, it felt like we can't track runners through midfield, and I don't know if we watched Harris get burned plenty last year on those same sort of things. It kind of hurts to say already, but boy, I wish Frankie Maya didn't want to demand a trade. We could have really used his skill set for this game. Not saying, once again, that was finalized, $950,000 with $75,000 extra in GAM coming our way over 2 years. So
I think it was 125, wasn't it?
I think the 75.
Oh, it was 125 in incentive.
Yeah,
he has to meet certain performance incentives, and it's 125. And I do believe if they get a fee for selling him later, we do get a cut.
Yes, as long as it's outside of MLS, I believe, for that part.
Correct.
Derail there with some talk, but that kind of seems the defensive skill set we would have liked to see in this game in Frankie's, which I was happy then when we did bring Stanko in the second half. I think we did a little bit better on tracking the runners through there. And then at that point, they were more whipping crosses in like through the air rather than dragging them back through the ground. I think we were slightly more solidified, and it was one of those things like we were solidified watching the runs, but then we were definitely not trying to play out as much through the ground. So it was one of those damned if you don't kind of scenarios with that substitution in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I said, we can flip over here and just kind of go through some of this kind of interesting things I saw from my rewatch and kind of get your opinion on them, Cody. We kind of covered the first one here just with Kubo dropping back along the back line. Like I said, I think that's something to watch going forward against, I don't know, maybe a less aggressive team, which I'm not sure we're going to find most of the season on our MLS schedule kind of going through here. It looks like everyone's kind of, especially Nashville, with such organized and such like a just coherent starting lineup, that same ones from last year. They just looked very organized and knew what they were doing. So maybe this was just a bad week one against a team that's played together so far, but I'd like to see maybe some more of this, especially if it's going to be that partnership there long term instead of Cruz potentially, where they let Kubo be the one to start the possession. Because I've noticed Makoto looks very comfortable on the half turn receiving. That's one thing I noticed when he came in last year. So I'll be curious to see if that wrinkle sort of sticks around, if we are more evenly kind of in possession through the entire game. And then we got one here I think we both noticed with how high our fullbacks were. Zhao's very high up here at the right, far off on the left here. We have Matarrita. You can tell most of these I start recognizing people by their boots. That's right, boots. We're gonna start get ready for our
That's proper.
Yeah, we're getting ready for our Super League invitation when it tries to relaunch. So we make sure we want to have all the terminology around. But this is very much where both of them were for most of this game, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Like those are our defenders, and you can see both of our central midfielders in the play. And it just kind of made sense why we were getting beat so much on the counter for a lot of this game, or just like beat wide, beat down the middle, beaten in the air, sort of beaten everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and as I mentioned when we first started, Matarrita at least did a good job of dropping back when possession changed. Zhao could have been standing right there the entire match and would have had the same effect on defense.
Yes, and at least going on to this next one, this is kind of the still right before Lucho's goal, kind of showing Matarrita played that through ball through about 3 Nashville SC defenders, and then Lucho took it up and over the goalkeeper. I'm going to let you know, when I was there, when this goal happened, I let out, I'm going to call it a squeal, I think. I don't really know the noise that came out of my body watching this goal happen this early into the game. It was like all the pent-up excitement from finally being like at a game, seeing the new team, seeing Lucho, and we do this, and I'll never be able to replicate that sound unless like somehow in the moment again. But this is exactly why we went out and got Ronald Matarrita for this ball, this contribution to the attack. Frankly, I know he's a left back, but we didn't bring him in here to be that really solid defender. I think we brought him in more because we want to play attacking football.
Yeah, and he worked it well this game.
Yep. And then kind of looking at the next one here, as we kind of talked about Lucho and Brenner kind of being willing pressers. This is the one right before the ball's played back to the goalkeeper, but then he fouls Brenner. Brenner and Lucho are both closing down Romney here. You see Walker's image just like pass it back, get rid of it, kind of just get rid of, like, we don't want any part of this. Everybody's kind of effectively closed down with the way those two kind of trapped him off from kind of being able, that gave him the only pass was the back pass. So like a very effective 2-man press here. And honestly good positioning from the rest of the midfield. Harris would be able to close out over here, the right back. Kubo's on, I want to say it's Anibal Godoy there in the midfield. And this is something I want to see if we're able to build on also going in the next game. It's not just one, I think those two pressing up top together seem to be on the same page already. So that's kind of very nice to see that happening. So I'll be curious to see if we can capitalize on that some more and get some easy penalties, goals from that kind of the rest of the season too.
Yeah, no, it's great to see. And as much flack as I give Kubo, he's got his man marked pretty well on your still shot.
Yeah, so this one,
Granted, it's just a sniff of
so
of 1 second of a moment, but he's got his man
yeah,
marked, and he's cut the pass
I'll
off.
say the issues of the runners running free was more near our box. So we can kind of see, we talked about here in the 20th minute where they start taking control. And as this one, you can probably notice, Kubo does not have his man very effectively covered in this one. He's about a solid 2 yards behind him. And you mentioned this one, Zhao down there in the right is kind of still not necessarily far. Madrid is way farther out of the play because we turned it over on this one. But he's just staring kind of down at the ball here. And I want to say that's Leal there. That's kind of right, I don't want to say behind, but like trailing the play. And you can see Godoy's pointing him out to make the run. And Zhao just somehow doesn't see it coming and kind of does.
Never does.
Yeah, it was such a weird one. Like, because this led then to him not effectively closing him down and letting that cross happen in the box for Nashville's first goal. And that's what I said. Tyton sort of makes a poor diving attempt, which was luckily not an omen of things to come for him. And turns out after this, he was pretty much, well, he was our man of the match. But he kind of deflects this, and you can kind of see already here, Madrid never fully recovers, and Makoto doesn't really help pick up that sort of runner. Both of those guys sort of miss him there at the back post, and that's just an easy tap in for Cadiz, who obviously for Nashville finished it and should finish it. So like that's kind of what as we talked about here, where this sort of just kind of starts to fall apart.
And they attacked that side, Zhao, like I said, they attacked that Zhao side the entire match. I lost my mind watching this just from the fact that the spot was pointed out for about 20 yards and Zhao never picked up the mark. He stared at the ball the entire time. And yes, I know it's his first match in this new position, but this goal could have been prevented. Maybe they might have got another shot. We don't know what would have happened out of it, but this specific entire run could have at least been foiled better instead of letting Leal basically get a free run and then an easy crossover into the box.
Yeah, obviously he just sort of ate us alive this game overall. But yeah, it looked like they made a very determined effort to attack the weak links of our team, which is the middle and just that flank. That's where most of the damage came from. Kind of brought up the one here, sort of about the 27th minute of just kind of losing track of runners. That is a Nashville SC player wide open directly between Pedersen and Hagelin. And both Kubo and Makoto are also nowhere. And this somehow was not a goal. I don't like, there was another great save by Tyton, but that was just wide open, somehow losing track of a man right in the middle of the box, which is kind of unfortunate to see because this is exactly the issue we had last year with anything sort of played on the ground and like right in front of the 6-yard box, sort of, from the touchline, as the Man City goal is kind of how they score everything. He wanted to tap in, and this should have been a tap in. And this is just what it felt like the whole game of just watching Nashville runners just kind of run free in the box.
Yeah, the back, and the funny thing is the center backs weren't even awful this game at all.
Yeah,
they were kind of consistent. They are what they thought we were. What is the old what was the football saying? Or they are who we thought they were. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. They played exactly like they did last year. Which isn't good. It isn't bad. They're very average MLS center backs. Hopefully, we get Vanderwerf back soonish. I think it's 4 to 6 weeks. Does that sound about right?
That's what I heard. I may have made that up the first time I said. I swear I heard that somewhere, but I don't think we've gotten any sort of updated timetable on his return.
So these are the center backs for now.
And until Valencia is here on his visa, and whatever roster move we have to make to get him here on the active.
Yeah. So I'm gonna at least venture to say the first 4 matches. Here's your center back pairing. We can just hope they get better. They weren't bad.
No, I think
this is unfortunate, but they weren't bad. They weren't good. They were just there, and you just hope they can get better match by match playing together.
This seems more of a communication breakdown between midfielders and center backs than I think just poor positioning. It just seems like sometimes they weren't aware that those guys were running free on them. So I wonder if that's just not used to communicating from Kubo to the center backs from there. I hope that's what it is, because you think communication can be fixed a lot easier than just poor play overall. So I don't think our center backs did terrible on these kind of plays. I thought they were very awful in the air a lot of times where they need to be marking their guys better, and we'll kind of look at some of those. I have an image or two of that later. But I think they just did a poor job. I thought they did worse on set pieces than they did in the run of play.
Sure.
And then, so this is kind of what we saw a lot last year, too, is how this is the one with Makoto dropping deep in possession. And I did not like to see us kind of revert to this after really liking how it looked Kubo did. Because every time Kubo got the ball, I was sitting there in the stands going, he's going to pass it back. Got it, immediately went. Never once tried to turn. Like, he never even turned his head, it felt like. This is what we saw a lot of last year, and I was a little unfortunate to see this again because I think this really led to us, once again, getting outnumbered in the midfield a lot of times. And then we weren't really able to effectively play it up the side to Zhao, Matrita, then on to Barrial and Harris. And it kind of just seems like we put ourselves at a numerical disadvantage on these. Now, Lucho did come in and receive a lot of the time, but then that takes him away from sort of the attacking third. So I don't know if that's necessarily the best option. But I think we did better when Kubo was back here in Makoto's spot than we did with Makoto, just with their strengths. Makoto's better on the turn. And as we think and point out, we could be wrong if someone else out there has the opinion, but I just don't think Kubo's is good enough with the ball having to make the turn.
Yeah. I actually have no comments. it's pretty much it, yes.
Just we've kind of hit on him, and unfortunately, we're probably going to have to, I hope we change our tune on him at the NYCFC game, but I don't think things are going to change in that aspect after basically a full season now.
Yeah. I want to change. Like, there's nothing more that I want. Well, there's a lot more that I want. There's nothing more that I want for him, for me to change my attitude about him. He just hasn't done anything to prove me wrong, but I want him to.
Yeah. And just kind of going back to some more midfield issues. This was one of the crosses that was put in. I believe it's by Leal over here. And what I noticed on this one was that this runner kind of came in to rise up for this header, just unchallenged. Makoto doesn't even look aware that there was a runner free behind him. And you can turn and see here, I believe it's Cadiz is already in the air, and Makoto's just turning to kind of even notice that he's there. And the Nashville player's already up in the air putting, I want to say, another save here. This one was by Tyton off a header. And it's just more poor, maybe communication, because it looks like our center backs are both guarding the same player here. So it just really looks like whatever sort of defensive scheme we're trying to run when the ball is in the air, if we're doing some sort of zone marking or man marking, we look to be whichever one it's supposed to be, not good at it.
No. And you just hope it gets better. New York plays a completely different style of football, so we'll see what happens Saturday. You're not going to see as many crosses as we did in this match with Nashville, because that's Nashville's game. They like to get in the center of that box. But it's got to improve. We walked away with a point in this match, but if we don't, we're looking at a repeat of the past two seasons.
Yeah,
but with 2 goals already for us. So
that's right. We're goal scoring juggernaut now.
That's right.
So just kind of looking at this next one, as we've already talked about, Zhao defensively burned here by Leal, just turns right around him. And I don't think that's the worst aspect of this. I don't expect Zhao to be a great one-on-one defender. At least here he's kind of making an effort, putting in a tackle, gets beat, what have you. The issue is here is this, the runner, I might actually be Godoy up here. Either way, still shots are very blurry. The runner here by Kubo and Barrial, the worst part, they're ball watching. He makes a run in, uncovered, and receives the ball in the box. And I think that's the worst part. I think that's one thing I mentioned here. We get caught ball watching a lot, and our midfielders do. Even sometimes the center backs. Like, there should be no way that this play goes from this to the runner here by Kubo and Barrial should not be able to run by 2 players and receive an open ball into the 18. Like, it's just poor marking, decision making from multiple players. And I want to say, I don't even know. I think that should be Kubo's pickup, just because I don't expect Barrial to drop deep. But then again, because that's not what he'd done all game, and it looks like that's not what we want out of our wings on this, is dropping back, which I think we're probably going to have to adjust a little bit. As we kind of mentioned last year, I think our wings came inside and didn't help out much defensively. Like, they came back, but I don't really remember them contributing to the defense. And then here they just, between the combination there of Kubo and Barrial, just let a free runner right into the box.
Now, just because you've rewatched it more recently than I have, that's Makoto there in the middle. Does he pick him up?
No. So the run here doesn't angle into the penalty spot. It angles more to the corner of the 18, which is why I think it's on Kubo or Barrial here. Because Makoto is where he should be to kind of sort of cut out any runner that comes into that space between Hagelin and Pedersen. This run goes between Hagelin and Zhao. I want to say believe that's Hagelin here. Between Hagelin and Zhao, he goes into that space.
Okay.
And then where that shouldn't be Hagelin to peel off, because if he peels off for that, it could have been, but then that means Makoto needs to take Hagelin's man. So either way here, they really put it in a nice position to where I'm not sure, no matter which option they take here, we didn't make the right choice, but they also here could have put us in a position to make the wrong one, where this run could have gone different. And it looks like just a well-organized sort of pattern of play that Nashville has down from last season. Like I said, this is the whole same starting 11 for most of last year once Cadiz came over on his designated player deal. They just look like they know exactly where they're supposed to be and when they're supposed to make those runs. And it looks like we just weren't sure how to pick these guys up.
Sure.
But this does lead to a nice, probably our last, I'm going to say, good attacking moment of the game right here before halftime. We force the ball in a turnover, and Barrial here gets it, turns, and sprays this one out to the left of Lucho. And we just kind of have a bunch of numbers finally going forward. Brenner's hustling, Kubo's hustling. They're out of position, and we're making the exact runs we're supposed to off of this, and this led to a shot. But it was just turned, like Barrial came in, picked this ball up, knew exactly where he was supposed to go with it and looked, and it was just a really nice, what we should be trying to do when we're facing that much pressure that we weren't able to pull off. This is where if we're going to have to sit back in some of these games, we're going to have to be very efficient. And to start the game, obviously, 2 goals on 2 shots. We were very good. And this was probably about our last real chance of the game. This is still in the first half. But it was very nice to see what our counterattack can look at when everyone's on the same page. And this was a promising moment to me in the rewatch, because I honestly didn't even remember this one from happening, because I kind of just, all I imagined us was the ball like 80 shots at Tyton for the rest of the game. But this was a very nice moment, and it looked like something that we can easily replicate with more reps with the starting 11. Most of the starting 11 here kind of just on the same page. Like, they knew exactly where they were supposed to go with this, made the right passes, made them quickly, and it just led to a nice moment.
Yeah. And Barrial, with the ball at his feet, he's good.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good player. We just haven't had the consistency with him yet.
Yes.
He hasn't been good for 60, 70 minutes. It's been, here a minute and a half of, oh, heck yeah, like this guy can play. And then he's absent for the next however much time. But no, this was exciting. I do remember this moment, and his touch was beautiful. This is what the offense could be.
Mm-hmm.
This could have been, well, it could have been the other way too, but this could have been 3-1 going into half FC easily.
Yeah, I really think it sounds dumb, us not getting a third goal, but getting a third goal early, like after the first 2, like we tried to really clamp down and we could have tried to put it away, and we just didn't take that, and we really lost all the momentum, and this would have been a nice chance to kind of get that third goal. Which really felt like we were going to need. It really feels like 3 goals is going to be our magic number this season. We're either probably going to lose some games, 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, and it just seems like 3 is going to be our magic number to really just close games out this year. So, in kind of more looking at here, some, I don't want to say maybe poor communication. But this one, Matrita was kind of had his and this one he's got his back turned to Calvin Harris and where the ball is played from. But this runner came in behind him, and he looked completely unaware there was a runner behind him. So this is kind of some of the pros and cons you get him out to read. He's always looking to make kind of the aggressive play and kind of gets caught ball watching here. But also, I think this is more of a lack of communication on our defense. No one yells out, I want to say, to that runner's coming until it's way too late. So either that's, I don't know if it's supposed to be on the center backs, Tyton, Kubo, Makoto, Harris here, but this ball has just kind of slipped right by him. And it just seems once again that we're not on the same page from a communication level defensively. And as we keep talking about, I hope it improves, but it's looking like it's going to take a little longer than a few games just from the repeated mistakes that keep happening that I keep seeing in this game.
And one thing we do have to take into account here is that this is essentially an entire new back line. Obviously the right and left backs, Jal's not new to the team, but he's new to the position. Matarrita is brand new, and the center backs played at the end of last season together a little bit, but together it's a new back in entirety. It's a new back line. So the communication you expect to get better as the season moves along. Those are the expectations we should have, is that, here's what we're noticing in match week 1. By match week 3, we should see some kind of slight to significant improvement.
Yeah, so I hesitate to be too negative with saying this is bad. I'm just worried with how bad it was throughout this entire game. The ceiling for it getting better isn't as high as I think we might hope it would be, at least for right now. Obviously, Van der Werf comes back, Viacia comes back, possible another different maybe midfielder. We're probably going to bring in another midfielder, I would think, with the new money we have, and we need another 6-8 that's more defensively oriented, hopefully. And just changes like that would make this better. So it's one of those, I hate to be so negative on it, but I think it was so bad through the whole 90, well, we'll say the whole 75 minutes where Nashville had the ball, that I'm worried it's not going to be able to be fixed as quickly as we hope to really be dangerous, at least the beginning part of the season.
Sure. And I will also, just to counter you again a little bit, but not on purpose, there's no reason we shouldn't go into New York on Saturday and win. New York, NYFC is not a great team.
I have not had a chance to look at them too much. I know Hebert's still out, but I know we'll kind of touch on that when we do our preview. It's one I really haven't had a chance to look at NYCFC yet. They weren't one of the teams in preseason that I was excited to look at. I don't know.
And we'll touch on that more. Now we'll have another episode out later this week for our match week 2 preview. But I just don't want to keep being too negative, because I feel like we're very negative on this team a lot, which they deserve. Past 2 seasons have been awful. We did walk away with a point this match, but we played awful. I shouldn't say awful. We didn't play well for 75 minutes of it. But just so everyone knows, we do love this club a lot, or else we wouldn't be doing this. We don't like being negative. It's just we have to point them out.
Yeah, so let's roll through my last 2 negative images I have here before we talk on some positive notes. So this one is a corner kick in the 70th minute, and this is Walker Zimmerman. This is the one that goes off the crossbar. And I'm just very confused by Nick Hagelin's defense on this one. Walker Zimmerman's going to be there for these set pieces. And he poorly mistimes his jump to where he thinks that ball's going to be. And 2 is just, there's a ton of space between him and the reigning defensive player of the year, who is a danger on set pieces. It just looks like he just, I obviously he went up to try to defend it, but I think he's just so poorly positioned to go up to defend that when he misses, it looks even worse. That he's just not kind of right on him. You have to put a body on these kind of guys on a set piece. Not let them get that easy jump in, kind of contest it more. Because this was basically a free header right at goal that we are extremely lucky did not end up in the back of the net.
Yeah.
And then kind of the real last one here as we keep harping on. This was a ball that was played from midfield just over the top of Zhou Zhao. Like, you could see him when this ball was kicked. He turns, he looks up, and he watches it, and then he just starts backpedaling and then takes off and having to sprint behind it. And considering from, like, how far this cross was played, like, he was caught completely out of position. He was getting ready to kind of come up and join this attack, and then just did not recover quickly enough. Like, just wasn't aware that there was going to be sort of a runner in behind him. And it was just... Then this led to 2 shots on goal on Tyton, which is, I think, why it stood out to me more when I, like, watched this and I rewound it to watch that cross come in. And he just got caught up. And he was really, like, he's recovered some distance here, but he was much farther up, sort of the lighter patch of grass. What is that, about 6 to 8 yards before? Like, because obviously he's quick enough to recover, but he was so far out of position when this ball was turned over and he had not recovered yet that he just got completely crossed over. Like, it was just kind of more of the same for as we saw this game.
Yeah. We can't say it any more times. They attacked that side all night, and it worked almost every time.
Yeah, I mean,
Zhao's got to get better.
Everything we saw,
position.
like, Liao was Nashville's player of the match, assist a goal, and just pretty much... It was funny, his goal came from, obviously, the opposite side he was running all night on. I thought was hilarious because... Actually, his goal kind of brings me to another point. I don't think we did very well winning, like, the second ball. Like, any sort of, like, we had, like anything that kind of bounced out and back around, it always seemed like Nashville sort of got it, and which is a reason why we weren't able to get into more of those, like, advantageous counters with them being disorganized, but it really only happened once more. We never were able to get any real numbers into a counterattack, and I think it's just because we didn't do well enough at sort of challenging, you know, that second ball, the header comes down into the box and spills. We weren't winning those. Like, those are getting, you know, ricocheted around for more shots, you know, recycled back out for possession for Nashville, and just felt like we weren't really the aggressor there for a while, and just didn't really look like we had the sort of energy, especially at the end of the game. We probably did not have the energy from just getting, you know, shocked for, what would we say, 75 minutes. Like, we probably just didn't have it mentally out there to kind of want to make those runs. We were just trying to stay in that shell and defend. But that's something that's going to have to be a change for these. When teams do get that much possession on us, we're going to have to be more aggressive about the chances we are able to create ourselves.
Yeah. All right. So let's switch the tone a little bit here. Let's not be so negative. Give me just a few positives you took out of the night.
As we kind of touched on, I think Brenner and Acosta looked like exactly what we wanted them to look like. I was really excited with just how physical and even a little chippy Brenner looked out on the field. Like, he was kind of, guys challenged him, he kind of came back at him later, maybe a little kick here, a little kick there, like, wasn't afraid to go into a challenge. Definitely pressed pretty well, got up there, seemed very comfortable with players kind of kicking out at him. That was nice to see, because that's one of the things when you see the new, like, younger players come to this league, that sometimes it is a more physical league than coming from, like, the Brazilian or Argentina. Like, MLS is not the retirement league that the rest of the world really wants to say it is. Like, it's a physical and hard competition, and it looked like he'll be able to adjust quickly to that and well. That was one of the things that stood out to me there. And then Lucho too just looked fantastic. Like, he was able to dribble through multiple defenders and just never, like, he was always hustling.
Yeah, I would say we definitely, and we've harked on this before, we have our 10. There's no doubt we have our 10, and he's not wearing the number, but we have our 9. Another bright spot, we could put a negative or positive spin, but I'm going to choose to do positive, is Matarrita. He played what he was brought in to play. He's going to get beat occasionally, but he was brought in to take the ball from the back and push it upfield, and he did that great. He did that very well when we had possession.
Yeah, I don't know if this was able to be seen on the broadcast, just from don't know what angle they had, but coming out in the second half, right before kickoff, he was walking around and clapping at people and, like, moving his arms and yelling across the field, like, trying to get everyone fired up, like, to go into that second half. So that was really cool to see, that he just kind of looks like he's taking on that veteran leadership role that this team needs, him and Lucho, It looked like they're both doing that. Lucho obviously wearing the captain's armband for this. So like that, I don't know if that was able to be seen from the broadcast. I seen it live, but he was like before that, he was like, "Let's do this. Let's get this. Let's get out of here with a win." And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. But it was nice to see sort of that veteran leadership that I think probably this team sort of like. I'd say MLS veteran leadership because Madrid has been here for years now, and just kind of seems like he knows what this league's about and how these games are going to go. And I think, yeah, seems to be exactly what we wanted with that signing.
Yeah. Both the starting wingers, Calvin Harris and Barreal more than Harris, had fantastic moments. They weren't consistent. There were bad times, but they had moments when the ball was at their feet, and you're like, okay, this is why you're starting today. That's a small bright spot there. Obviously, the biggest bright spot we had was Tyton. The man was absolutely unbelievable this match. I honestly just doubt we'll see another performance like that from him the rest of the year, and that's nothing against him. It's just that's how it was like I had to imagine it's like an out of body experience for him because besides that first goal, the second goal, there's nothing you could do about. The man stopped. The man was a brick wall in the goal, and it was amazing and awesome to watch. I don't like that many shots were thrown at him, but the amount of saves that he had and the amount of good saves that he had, those weren't easy. Ball kicked right at his chest and he grabbed it. I mean, he was all over that goal.
Yeah, I was getting some serious Tim Howard versus Spain Confederation Cup vibes from this performance. Like, yes. I was just like, more for him, not necessarily. One thing I'm just thinking about that now, I don't remember a single shot that like a defender dove in front of. You know how it, like sells out, slides for it? I don't really recall that happening, which would make sense considering how poorly positioned they were most of the time. Like, I don't like this didn't feel like the whole team defensive effort to kind of keep that like keep the score what it was. It was like a one-man show back there. It wasn't like a full, 11 men. We got this lead. We're the plucky underdog and we're just gonna throw everything we have at it. This was like, no, I'm putting the team on my back and we're gonna come out here with a point.
Yeah, and we came out with a point because of that. But I mean, hey, if that's how we want to kind of end this right now, we came out with a point, guys. We went away week 1 in Nashville
against the playoff side.
Against a playoff
and honestly,
side,
they look like
against an Eastern Conference opponent that came away, and we came away with a point.
And Nashville looked very impressive this game. Like, it's going to be tight. Like I said, but these are the teams we need to get points against, especially on the road. Not just like obviously the rest of the Eastern Conference, but ones that we more than likely look to be in direct competition with for that same 6-7 slot for playoff positioning. Like, these are the teams we need points against. Like, if we drop points to your Perus and Torontos and things like that, okay. But you have to beat the teams that are going to be right around you.
Yeah, and that game the last year or even the year before, Nashville wasn't in MLS the year before, but just as a standpoint from us, that's a 3-0, 4-0 loss guaranteed. And I probably would have had it, had it on a second TV by the second half. So the fact that even though Nashville did have possession for what seemed like 75 straight minutes, I never ever once thought like, okay, we're going to lose this match. Like, oh, it's over. I was never negative about it. And I think that's a good thing to this team. I always thought, like, okay, if we can just get this ball up to Lucho, if we can get this up to the wings, like, we have a chance to take 3 points home. It didn't end up that way, but I will never argue with a point away.
No,
unless it's the end of the season and we need 3 points and then we get a point. Then I'd argue with a point away. But for right now, match week 1, I'll take the point away.
That's all when you go on the road, you always just points on the road, no matter 1 or 3. Need points on the road, especially if you're going to try to be a playoff team. Hold serve at home, win at home, draws on the road. You do that most of the time, you're going to be in the playoffs, no matter what sport.
Yeah, and if the season ended today, guess what? We're in the playoffs.
Yeah. 4 seed.
4. Yeah, 4 or 5, depending on where you look, but we're in the playoffs.
Hosting a playoff game at that. So that's
not looking bad.
So I've already booked my playoff ticket for West End Stadium. Was it May?
No. that is today's
West End
news.
Stadium.
It's today. That's one thing we did not touch on yet. So if anyone hasn't heard by the time, whenever Nick gets around to putting this episode up, I would guess either later tonight or tomorrow. It is no longer West End Stadium. It is unfortunately TQL Stadium. That is one of the worst stadium names I've ever heard. Granted, they're paying us millions of dollars. We're not going to argue. It's revenue for the club. You're never going to argue with it. I kind of wonder who else was in contention.
Yeah.
You know, was there a P&G option or something? I guess TQL is local, which is cool. It's about the only compliment I can give it. But it's TQL Stadium. So it's West End. We're going to always
West End Stadium.
From this point on, we will always refer to it as West End Stadium. But at least since the announcement was today, we had to at least say this happened today. Some company named TQL in Cincinnati is giving us millions of dollars to put their name on the stadium for us fans to still call it West End Stadium.
As long as TQL is now going to be able to organize rides from all around the city to the game, kind of get those logistics where it's like, oh yes, I'm taking the TQL trailer from the Banks to West End Stadium now. I will still call it West End Stadium.
That's an idea.
They should be riding around now with, like, I don't know, can they rebrand the Cincinnati Bell connector to be the TQL connector on game days? Like, this is what we should be looking into.
Attach a trailer to the back of it.
Cincinnati, contact me. I've got great ideas. we know it's gold in here. One day we'll tell you about my sweet 80s cop movie for the Reds that we organized one time. Story for another day. But I think that all this covers everything for this game. Yeah. Optimistic going forward. Like I said, we'll be back later this week after we kind of relatively, maybe like 8-foot deep dive into New York City FC, kind of see what they're looking like this season. Like I said, I have not had a chance to even see what their lineup looked like they lost week 1 to DC United though, correct? That was a 2-1.
Yeah,
so I'm curious to see that one. More from the DC United side, just throw that one randomly out there because Lasada, the new manager they have in, I was excited to see how his style adapts to MLS because he sort of a Bielsa disciple, aggressive pressing, kind of like Heinze down in Atlanta. So I'll be curious to see how that one goes and if that we can actually take too much from that performance from NYCFC going into this one. I'll be curious to see how it goes. But any final thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, and it was no. Not really. We'll see you guys later this week. Talk about New York City. Once again, without giving our preview away too much, I personally don't think there's any reason we shouldn't walk out of this weekend with 4 points in the MLS. This should be a 3-point weekend. I'm going to stick with that. But we'll talk about that a little bit later this week.
Sounds good to me. Yeah. Make sure we'll keep that. I need a score prediction from you for next time. Don't forget, because I am Nostradamus, so I'll let you know mine.
Okay. We just can't talk. We can't talk about it before we both give the score predictions on the next.
No, we're going to do a very good job of never talking about these things before we get live on a mic together. Let's keep fair. These hot takes so we can keep bouncing off each other going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to see. I need one hot take from this game to end us on. Looking at my notes. Boy, I don't have a hot take for this one. Maybe I'll say Nick.
Mine's not a hot take, but Zhao can honestly not get anything but better than he performed.
Challenge accepted.
So once again, we walk away. I can honestly not see a way. And this once again, I love Zhao. I can't see a way he could have performed at his position that he was playing any worse. So realistically, he can only get better. So that my hot take is he performs much better against New York, which isn't really a hot take. It's just it's hopeful.
Bad news. 2-2, 93rd minute in New York City FC, NYCFC this week at historic Yankee Stadium. Joe Zhao, red card, penalty for NYCFC, and we lose the game. Would that be worse?
That's okay. That would be worse for us, but that's...
He was also responsible for the first 2 goals. Berg.
Okay. There you go. I said, like, his play throughout the match.
Okay. Once again, I'm just being... Debbie Downer on Zhao here, but I agree. I don't think he can realistically, outside of like worst performance of the century at right back, probably be worse than what happened this game. As long as I'm with you there. I don't think he'll do worse than this, but I'm worried that this more is going to be closer to average from him. So that's just my only worry.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right. Any last thoughts?
No, positive. We did score 2 goals again, like as we said earlier. So let's end on that. One of the highest scoring teams in the East right now, I think.
I think Montreal had 4, if I remember correctly. But I literally think all of the DC had 2 in their win, but I think all of the ties or all of the draws were 2-2.
I think Inter Miami had 2 also, but they still lost to the Galaxy.
They lost to
Galaxy.
Chicharito. Yeah, Chicharito finally was Chicharito. So, oh no, I lied. Columbus. That was a strange one. Columbus and Philly.
They tied. Yeah,
was 0-0.
That was a 2-2.
Yeah, that was weird. From your MLS Cup champs and your supporters shield, it was a 0-0 draw. Very strange.
Affair. Cagey.
There were good shots. They just didn't land. Wait, Orlando City. I think did they play the Red Bulls?
No, they played Atlanta.
There were a few zeros. Either way,
tied too. That was 0-0.
That's right. But it was 0-0. There were a few 0-0s. But okay, so to your point of I got really sidetracked there. Montreal is the only team technically ahead of us with more goals in the Eastern Conference right now.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
The new Montreal. What is it? The Club de Football Montreal, I believe, this year is with the new badge.
Club de Foot de Montreal.
Yeah, they're off to a good start. So, all right, guys. Well, appreciate you listening today. Nick, are we getting on Apple Podcasts this week? Will it happen? All right, so we might be on Apple Podcasts this week. If not, we're still on Anchor, still on Spotify, and obviously on YouTube. For Nick, I'm Cody. Thanks for listening to another episode of FCC Fan TV, guys.
See you guys.